This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. And Facci, we've got two special guests with us today. Can you tell the people who are joining us on Setting the Pace?
Yeah, we got Ryan Knight and Bradley Knight. Honestly, I'm the one who's honored to be here because we were joking off air that I haven't been on those three-way pods with you guys. So really excited to get to know you guys and honestly talk some Pacer basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Pacers post-up, Setting the Pace crossover here. They're with the Believe Podcast Network. We're the Blue Wire Podcast Network. So, nice to get a little mix-up here. But we're going to be talking about, we're going to do two episodes together. So this is going to be really fun. This is going to be part one, part two. But in part one, we're going to be diving in, Facci, into all of the stuff that happened on Friday, and it was kind of a slow news day in July, but LeBron James finally made his decision, and he said this is the final decision. Well, we'll see about that, but he said it was the final decision, and he is joining the Philadelphia 76ers. And so before I get your thoughts on this, Foch, I want to go to Ryan first here because I know that you guys are big LeBron fans over there at the Pacers post-up. So when you saw that LeBron was going to Philadelphia, what was your initial reaction?
Well, I was honored that you asked us to come on to talk about LeBron because we are not shy with how we feel about how he's carried himself through the NBA over the years. I will try to stick my takes here on the basketball front because that's probably the more important thing. And the Sixers obviously get a massive upgrade and have had probably one of the crazier off seasons in recent memory. And adding in, you've got 4 All-NBA talents on that team now. Now, health's going to be kind of a concern there, but if they all play, there's going to be some fit things in there. They're going to be a scary team, and it'll probably take a little bit of time to click. Most of the times when LeBron goes to a new team, whether it be the Heat or to LA, there was always kind of a, first 20 games, let's sniff this out. We'll see where it's going to be, which could put this in kind of an interesting spot because the East is going to be super competitive from top down. There might be one tanking team in the Brooklyn Nets, and even that kind of comes with an asterisk based on what picks they truly own in their arsenal. And so when you look at that, the Sixers might end up being a 6 seed, a 5 seed. That's probably the last matchup you want to draw in the first round, just knowing the full talent, depending on where health is at. So I'll maybe let Brad come in, but this shakes things up. I would love one true opportunity to finally take out LeBron. So a finals trip of taking down the 76ers LeBron, plus maybe beating the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe getting a little revenge on the Thunder is pretty much the ideal season. So we're at least getting that aspect of it, but it's gotten a lot harder, the road through the East. So Brad, where are you sitting right now today?
Ryan, you said it, took the words right out of my mouth. This is an opportunity for a Pacers team now to avenge all across the board, from Giannis going to Miami and kind of the history there with him and the Bucks and the game ball and all those things, to the New York Knicks getting their title without having to go through a Pacers team this last season. And now we layer in LeBron to the East conversation with one more chance to kind of avenge all of the history, if you will, that this franchise has run up against LeBron. And we are not LeBron fans. I'm not a LeBron fan, but you can't argue the results that he's had against Indiana, right? And part of the animosity I have for him has to come from a little bit of bias and fandom throughout the years of he's had our number. You go back to the Paul George, Roy Hibbert era, and we were close, but no cigar. Obviously, the Oladipo series with the block, was it a goaltend? All those things. Even the in-season tournament that Ryan and I got to attend. You talk about the final there against the Lakers and their size, really. That was before Siakam, so bothering us a little bit. But it's a major shakeup. I don't want to sit here and say I'm surprised. I think LeBron has made a habit out of these decisions in super team and trying to position himself, call it ring chase, call it whatever you want. He's done it enough in his career that I don't think this is somehow changing the narrative around LeBron. But to your point, Ryan, it is changing the narrative in the Eastern Conference that now becomes, frankly, a real argument. Is the East better or the West better? We have legitimately probably 12 teams that are vying for playoff positions. I can't remember the last time that was a conversation for us. And so if this Pacers team is going to get where we want to go, we are going to have our work cut out for us. Now, that said, I think it's all right in front of us. I love the continuity on our team. Anybody that saw Halliburton's post yesterday, I'm sure somebody wants to get to that here, and I won't steal steal that thunder, but you got to feel pretty optimistic. So, Facci, what do you make of all of this, LeBron, the East, etc.?
Man, the East is as scary as it's been in recent memory. I mean, all valid points, by both of you, that it's like top to bottom. Yeah, the Nets are the outlier. Everyone else is going for a championship. And that kind of looks like this Pacers team, the continuity that you mentioned, it's definitely evident. We have that chemistry where other teams have major pieces coming in to try to fit in. I think it was Derek Fisher who said, like, LeBron doesn't chase rings, he brings rings. And now in this scenario, it's a little bit of both. But I think that Philly, now you have to respect that they have NBA championship talent. But the thing that's going to be really interesting is I saw that the usage rate on that team of what their projected starting five is off the charts, and you got to wonder who's going to take the step back. A guy like Jaylen Brown had a 35% usage rate last year. That's not going to be able to happen. LeBron, is he going to have maybe the lowest usage rate of his career? It's hard to imagine, but the thing that is interesting that you got to respect is this is the first time LeBron has accepted a pay cut of any degree, and it's actually the largest pay cut in NBA history. Playing on a minimum contract really shows that winning has to be front and center. And the scary thing is if LeBron's willing to do it, I think a lot of other players have to be able to do that too, because what ground do they really have to stand on? So my hope is that outside of the Philly situation, that more players are willing to take pay cuts in order to win. We saw it happen with Wembanyama recently. We now see it with LeBron. Hopefully that's something to come in the future. But for right now, you got to respect Philly. Health is always going to be a factor. That's always what comes with a Joel Embiid type of team. But man, for now, the East is a scary, scary sight. Alex, what were your thoughts on LeBron signing?
Yeah, like I actually was a little bit shocked. I was slammed at work when the news took place, and somebody actually called me. They're like, "Hey, what do you think about LeBron going to the Sixers?" And I was like, "Oh, is that official now?" And they're like, "Yeah, Shams just put it out 2 minutes ago." And I was like, "Totally missed that. I've been really busy, but I'm just glad it's over." I was tired of hearing about it. I think that's where a lot of people were at. Like, can you just make your decision? Like, you're holding up so much in free agency, and there's so much to do with restricted free agents and like DeMar DeRozan and Bradley Beals and all those kind of guys. So now we'll maybe see how these other teams kind of fill out, because right now we're still kind of guessing on what these other teams could look like, especially in the Eastern Conference. But I do think it's a massive upgrade. Like when you think about, hey, they got Dean Wade in free agency, like that was going to be their starting power forward more than likely if they don't get LeBron. Then you put Dean Wade on the bench as like your 7th, 8th guy, and you start LeBron. Like that's a huge difference. Now you talk about pay cuts, Facci. I will say for LeBron James, he's making so much money off the court. This money does not even matter. So I don't think anybody in their prime really is going to take massive pay cuts moving forward. Maybe slight pay cuts. Like this is a massive pay cut because there was just no money out there in free agency for a team to pay LeBron either, especially if he's trying to win. So I do think it does change the dynamics of the Eastern Conference, drastically. I really love their pickup of Jaylen Brown for Paul George. That to me seemed like a slam dunk for them. A little bit of a head scratcher by Boston, what they're doing, but I think all the usage rate information is very fascinating to kind of see how they're going to figure this out. I've not been the biggest believer in Nick Nurse after that finals run, and I kind of feel like Kawhi maybe carried more of that load and that team did than what Nick Nurse actually did. But, Nick Nurse was a good coach 5-6 years ago. I don't feel like we've really seen that on display as much recently. So curious to see how that works out. But they got Bob Myers there kind of making the calls. And when you have a guy like that in the front office who has that aura and that presence to go out there and kind of lure players in, like they're talking about bringing in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope now, who could got waived by the Memphis Grizzlies, and now they're just kind of stacking up players. It looks kind of similar to what the Heat did when they started bringing in all those veteran guys. You're like, oh, Shane Battier, whatever, he's old. Mike Miller, he's old. Well, all of a sudden, they're going to start playing a huge factor more than you probably realize. But I still think there's too many holes with that center position, and that's going to be the biggest factor there, because if Embiid can't stay healthy, who do they go to? And, Ariel Huckporty and Adem Bona don't really move the needle for me. You'll probably see them go a lot smaller with a Dean Wade at the 5. And, Ryan, that's when I come back to you. I really feel like the Pacers, the way they're built, they actually match up pretty well with this team. And you kind of hinted at it earlier, but the continuity of the Pacers roster being in place with a few minor additions, they're not having these drastic changes where they're going to have to really figure out who they are. It's more so these guys coming in that are going to have to, adjust to the Pacers. But Zubats and Oubre, it's a lot easier to kind of incorporate them with a core six that you've already established than, bringing in all these different players that are going to have to learn who gets the ball where and who's standing in the corner and how do they adjust to all those different roles.
Yeah, well, defensively, I like where your head's at because the matchups, at least in the starting units, are pretty much 1-to-1. You could break down, you'd put Nembhard on Maxey. Tyrese is probably going to have to go on Edgecombe just based on where the offense, but Pascal on LeBron. You'll be able to put Neesmith on Brown. And then Zubats is obviously way better poised to play, defensively against an anchor like Embiid than Miles Turner was. We knew that matchup very well and saw him get torched. And actually, with the way Embiid moves a little bit more now, I think Zubats can probably hold his own even better just because of where Embiid's knees are at. And he just is a little bit, stiffer out there on the court, and Zubats can use some of his strength. So defensively and a matchup wise, you like it. And then you obviously still like our depth. I'm with you. Dean Wayne's going to be a nice piece coming off. The Simons deal is still interesting, a good pickup for them. They'll probably add a couple guys on the vet minimum around them. And so that looks at it. Offensively, I think if Embiid's in the game, they're going to slow it down. But when Embiid is out, the Sixers are going to want to play fast between Maxey, Edgecombe, even LeBron. I know 42, 43, whatever he's at now, is still trying to run, play in fast break, maybe play a little bit more of the facilitator role. But that's still definitely going to be part of the game. And so I think it'd be kind of a fast-paced game between these two teams. And I still like where we can stand with these guys because of what we said with the bench, with the continuity. And with all the mouths to feed, I could see a lot of late game issues for the Sixers where it's kind of like, whose turn is it? Is it your turn? Is it my turn? Who goes? Who's the guy? And then I'm a little bit interested to see still where this whole Jaylen Brown piece lands. Like his whole thing was I wanted to get traded to be the guy. And you could argue that amongst Sixers fans, I mean, Embiid is obviously praised. Maxey's a heavy riser. Now you have LeBron. He's the fourth or fifth most interesting player on that team in terms of what they're going to be talking about, at least in the media. And yeah, I just don't know where his usage is going to lay. And is he going to like that? Because you could argue his role is even smaller now than it was going to be with Boston, even with Tatum coming back, depending on how their offense runs. So, Facci, I'll kick it to you. Do you think Jaylen Brown's happy about all these moves right now?
If you really want to win and add to the legacy, then I think, hey, that could really help. You already have a finals MVP, you got a ring that this could help, add more. I just feel like, yeah, this is someone that I think wanted to kind of, not to say get out of the Jason Tatum shadow, but this really isn't going to help. And I think to your point, it's very fair because you named a couple of all-stars that are ahead of him that can this team really have 4 all-stars? Maybe if they have the record to back it up. But if not, this could be Jaylen Brown maybe being a little bit exposed. We've heard that before analytically. A lot of teams, I think it was that report that sounded a little harsh. They're like, he's more like the 7th best player on the team. That sounded a little bit rough. But yeah, is a lot of mouths to feed. Only one ball. It's going to be interesting early on. I think for Jaylen Brown and everyone else, you're going to have to sacrifice. Like I'm looking at LeBron's stats right now. Scoring wise, it's gone down each of the last 5 years. Of course, he's getting older. He's playing at an age that no one's really played at before. So do we think we're going to see very sacrificed like LeBron, where maybe the scoring does finally dip below 20 points per game for the first time, but maybe his assists are higher. He's just still commanding more of a presence. I mean, Brad, is that something that you kind of envision that LeBron is just going to have to be more of his high IQ and intangibles? He can draw in defenders, but it's really you're now officially that potentially 3rd or 4th option for real this time.
Well, it's interesting, Facci, because I don't know, and again, I don't want to come off as biased. I don't know if his ego can handle it. I mean,
I don't think
Alex said we dragged this indecision out for 24 days, trying to hold kind of the entire league and media storm hostage so the spotlight could stay on him. That's how I read it. I know some will disagree. They're saying, oh, he contemplated retirement and it was the Rockets series that got him, reinvigorated in basketball. I'm not buying any of that. And so it's hard for me to envision a scenario where LeBron really wants to play third or fourth fiddle. I just don't think it's in his DNA. And frankly, it's not where he's been most effective. That comes back to a little bit of Alex's point around Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse's job, yeah, he's got a talent pool that is much richer now than it was 6 weeks ago before free agency and all, the Boston trade, et cetera. But his job just got a lot harder too, because he's got to figure out how to manage some big personalities. Embiid is a big personality, not there a ton, but still a big personality. Ryan mentioned the Jaylen Brown piece. Obviously, talking about LeBron and his role, I think it would behoove the 76ers if LeBron did exactly what you just said, Facci, found a way to use his IQ to be more of a glue connector piece, somebody that helps some of the other stars on that team really shine. And if he is willing to take that slight step back, I'm not saying, he's got to, hit the back seat by any means, but just recognize that this is a different point of his career, then frankly, I do think Philly becomes a little bit more of a problem. The only thing I'll say in that context is, I think as NBA fans, particularly, you go on Twitter and everybody's losing their mind about LeBron and the talent pool on this team, and it's Maxey and it's, Jaylen Brown. How many times have we seen this, multiple star stacking totally fail in this league? I mean, Phoenix, Brooklyn, Houston. It's even the first year that LeBron went to Miami, they weren't able to get over the hump. It does take time. Basketball is a team game. Depth matters. Continuity matters. Understanding where guys are going to be on the floor and how people want to be set up. Where do they like the ball? What fits? Who's taking what defensive matchup? And I think, frankly, defense becomes one of the more interesting conversations with this team. So I don't want to go too long on any one thread. But Alex, I'll let you pick it up. Anything that I said that you want to kind of run with there?
It is a scorching sports summer, and you can make all your picks on Prize Picks. The WNBA and baseball are heating up with big tennis slams and major golf tournaments on the horizon. There is no better place for all your summer sports picks than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Listen, the biggest stars in women's basketball are in the heart of their season. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, listen. And there's no better place to run your game on the W than Prize Picks. That's America's #1 sports picks apps. We've got MVPs raising their game to new heights. We got a rookie class ready to take over, all while teams are fighting for playoff positioning like your Indiana Fever. So make a lineup with player stats, pick game winners, spreads, or totals, and combine your picks in the same lineup. All on Prize Picks, now available in all 50 states. So download the app today and use code PACE to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, download the app today and use code PACE to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. No, I was actually going to ask you guys about the defense, because that's what I think is probably the biggest concern with this team. It's like Tyrese Maxey is not known for being a good defender. Joel Embiid was once a good defender, but has taken a step back with where he's at as a player right now, just from a health standpoint. I hate to say that, because right now there's already people saying, should the Sixers trade Joel Embiid? That's kind of who's going to trade for a $75 million contract? That's big question mark. The one that I've seen floated around on Twitter a lot, I even actually wrote about it a little bit, was him going to Milwaukee in a Miles Turner package, which would be really interesting, but you could get some other players back, and it would be Gary Trent Jr. just got this massive payday from Clutch. Maybe they can go join some Clutch players here, which would fill some salary there to kind of make that Embiid trade work. But no, I just think with Embiid taking a step back, and look, we've seen LeBron. He has definitely taken a step back defensively. He is not the defender that he used to be, and if you're going to put LeBron James on the worst player on the wing for the Pacers, who's guarding Pascal Siakam? You're going to put Jaylen Brown on him the whole game? Okay, that's going to wear Jaylen Brown out. Now, who's LeBron probably likely going to guard? I would say Nesmith or Nembhard, and that is still a problem for him, because both those guys are very capable of making him pay if he's not locked in on them defensively. So that's why I'm just saying, and Maxey also is not a great defender either, so you're going to put Edgecombe on Halliburton to try to stop him. I just think there's a lot of question marks here with how they're built defensively. They might have better options like a KCP and a Dean Wade off the bench for closing lineups and things like that for defensive purposes, but then you're taking away the threat of what they can do offensively, even though those guys can be 3-and-D type players. So I just like where, the Pacers stack up against a lot of these teams. And I know that's one of the things I wanted to transition into here, Facci, is because I feel like we're going back and forth and like, oh, the Sixers are really good, and Miami added Giannis, and the Raptors added Kawhi, and how's Boston going to look with this new look team? But people are sleeping on the Pacers, and we've seen that like the Pacers are at their best when they're the underdogs, when they're overlooked, overshadowed by all these other teams because people are like, they are the 14th seed last year in the Eastern Conference. They're not going to, catapult themselves way back up into the standings. Well, did you guys forget that they were just in the finals 2 years ago with a healthy Halliburton, and now this guy's doing East Bay dunks, Foch? So it's like, I don't know what to say, but I mean, that definitely had to give you a little bit of pep in the step yesterday when you saw that.
I can't hold back any longer. We've hinted at it twice. If we're not going to pick it up now, then when are we? That dunk had me running through a wall. That I felt like I love nothing more than when Pacer Nation just kind of comes out like a bunch of cockroaches out, and everyone swarms to social media and are like, did you just see what I just saw? Because to me, it felt like, LeBron who? Like that type of Tyrese Halliburton, that's the type of guy that we want out there. The guy that looks, honestly, potentially more athletic than he did before. He's got more size to him. This is someone who's going to have 16 months from his injury to when he's actually on the court again. I've never heard of a longer absence for a player. Like, we've seen players come back from Achilles injuries too early. Sometimes we've seen them 9 months to 12 months. This is 16 months. The Pacers handled this perfectly, and I would like to believe that there's other aspects of Halliburton's game that he's added since he's been out. So I'm with you, Alex. It makes sense for the Pacers to, enjoy being slept on, because I do think that we're not the team that really rises to the occasion when there is all of the expectations. I just feel like this team loves a chip on the shoulder, kind of being counted out, kind of being forgotten. That's when they're at their best. So yeah, we might not be the big talking point going into this season. Halliburton's return will be a storyline and a lot of stuff, but it will be overshadowed by some of the other additions that you mentioned. But I'm all right with it because I don't think it's going to take long for the Pacers to wake the league up when those teams are struggling with their fits and the Pacers are maybe getting off to, a solid start. We know from Halliburton's status that might take a little bit, but I do think there's something about I don't want to call it his aura, but his presence on the court is like enough to boost the confidence of every single player alongside him. And I think that that's something that was missing from day one of last year, that the Pacers were just never able to quite like bottle up that magic or that belief and feel that they could. They might say to the media, hey, we're going to keep it going. But like there was that missing link that was like, hey, our ceiling is kind of right here. If you're not watching on YouTube, I got my hand essentially touching my hair right now. That's where the ceiling was for the Pacers last year. So, Ryan, tell me if I'm wrong, but is this not where we're at our best?
No, it is. And I think as you look across the East, some of the matchups that I was most worried about, if you would have asked me going into this season or offseason, I actually would have said Boston was, at least for the Pacers, the toughest matchup with their wings and pace and how they play. And I think they've gotten worse. New York, we know we have their number, but they now lose Mitchell Robinson, which is a big piece, really a big game changer they brought off the bench. And so you start looking across the East, and it's, like I said, it's probably 10 deep. But matchup-wise, kind of what you were hinting at earlier, Alex, was, I mean, we look like we can play against anybody. Cleveland doesn't scare you. Detroit, we know, is big and is going to give us troubles with size, but their offense just can't keep up with the firepower we have. And so you start going down the list, and we are getting just every time you see the like favorites to win the East or title odds in this, we're like sometimes like ranked in double digits in the East. And I know people like to forget, and obviously it's been a year, so people haven't thought about the Pacers unless you're in Indiana a lot, but we went to the finals. We believe we probably would have won. And even the year before against the Celtics, we went to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the thing that I always say running is we have not lost a playoff series where Tyrese Halliburton was standing at the end of it. Like, and part of that, he needs to get healthy, take care of his body, and I think we're seeing him do that. And the East Bay dunk looked as good as I've seen him, in a while, obviously. And so it's all encouraging signs, but that's really just the key. keep our team healthy, get them in the playoffs, and we start matching up against the teams. But it's going to be difficult because likely in the first round, no matter where you land, if you think you're going to be in the top 4 of the East or, bottom 4 of the East, that matchup's probably going to have a Giannis in it or a Cade Cunningham. Like, you're not going to draw, or a Kawhi Leonard. Like, you're going up against immediate star power day one in the East. And so, Brad, just from a matchup wise, not to put you on the spot of it, like, who is the most concerning? Is it Philadelphia? Is it still the Knicks? Like, if you didn't want to draw anybody, who are you trying to avoid?
Well, it's a loaded question because you're asking about matchups, but you're also asking who do I don't want to avoid the Knicks by any stretch of the imagination. I don't want to avoid the Sixers. I want to welcome those opportunities because I frankly think in both cases we have a really strong argument to say that we match up well. Obviously, the New York thing, people are going to cite it's Mike Brown. It's a different system. They play more depth, and I'll give them all the credit in the world. They won the title. We weren't there. There was no resistance that we could provide. However, if history tells us anything, you should welcome a matchup like that. I thought in those series, we were able to exploit their two best players, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. I thought Brunson got away with kind of a okay, finals series. It wasn't great. I understand he had the really strong close in game 5, but, missed the game winner with the OG tip in. There were some real inefficient nights from him. I thought their frankly, title run was more about guys like OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson stepping up versus a Brunson really carrying them that all the way. And so I still think the Knicks are the champs. So that's the team that I'm going to point to and say, yeah, they're probably the toughest team out there. They can have the continuity argument, the same that we can. Yes, they lose Mitchell Robinson, but a lot of the core pieces in the starting lineup are still there. I think Boston will be sneaky. I just feel like they're going to figure out a way. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Jason Tatum, like these are talented guys. Paul George showed something in the postseason last year. He still had a little bit of life. I understand he'll be 36, 37 years old. So, it's not the PG from 10 years ago by any means, but I just think Boston's well coached. They shoot the 3 ball well. They're going to continue to do that. And when you're able to put them up, if they start going in, it's hard to keep up with. But I think the one thing that I do want to just kind of drill home, and I'll let Alex respond to this because he brought this up to begin this sort of kind of conversation. I think a lot of people in the media, I'll go back to Roy Hibbert all those years ago. You don't watch our games, right? So anybody that looks at last season and says, oh, Tyrese Halliburton is not going to take them from the 14th seed all the way back up to the top of the conference. And they're half right. It wasn't just Tyrese that was out last year. We had so many other key guys missing significant time. So yes, Halliburton was the story because of the nature it went down, the face of the franchise, Game 7, all of that. But make no mistake about it. If we had stayed healthier throughout the rest of the roster, we weren't a 14 seed. And all this conversation about top 4 pick and all that doesn't really ever happen. I don't know how you watch that dunk the other day from Hallie and say he's not going to be ready. Facci said it. 16 months. I would have been surprised to see that video before the Achilles injury. I didn't know he even had that in him, frankly. So
Agreed.
All of this, there was a report from Chris B. Haynes that was like, he might be ready to go. He's on schedule. And it's like, this, I'm not going to say it because I know you guys got kids that listen to this. This guy's going to be ready on the start of the season. Make no mistake about it. So, Alex, respond to whatever you will, but I think we are the most slept on team in the league by far.
Yeah, a couple of things. People know how I feel about Chris Haynes reporting. That's why I made a joke and tweeted out that, it was Damian Lillard's birthday, according to Chris Haynes, just because it's the most obvious thing. Like, it was so stupid. And then you've got, aggregators like Evan Sidery. Oh, Halliburton's expected. Oh, okay, idiot. Like, we know this is not news. Quit acting like you're reporting something. And then, I won't get into like the people that actually report stuff and just try to like steal stuff and act like it's their own reporting, but I just find it fascinating. But what I will say in terms of Ryan's question of who is the most, team you want to avoid, honestly, there's not really a team I'm looking at where I'm like, I'm like so afraid of that team that they're going to like be a problem for the Pacers in a playoff series. Like, I think they match up well with everybody, but they just got to be healthy. Like, that's the biggest thing. They just have to be healthy. And, I like the fact they can go bigger now with having Oubre on the bench, like a 6'8" wing, and you also had Jarris Walker, who is 6'8". If he can figure things out and take that next step. Like now you've got a lot of size to deal with size. If you want to do that, you have that versatility you're looking for. The only team that I think could be like a random thorn on the side of the Pacers is the Toronto Raptors. They have had the Pacers numbers the last couple of years with the style they play, and you add Kawhi Leonard to that mix. That is a bit concerning to me, especially for a first round matchup. It feels very much like, ooh, could this be a Hawks-Pacers 1-8 matchup where you're like, whoa, 7-game series, didn't see this one coming. But, not saying Kawhi's that great still, but he is very, very good when he's healthy. And then just the size and the way they play, they're just a very, very, very tough team. And that I think maybe with Zoo, it does make it a little bit different because you have more physicality down low. But I just think that's a team that could be a thorn on the side. But Facci, as we wrap this one up, I'm excited from a Pacers standpoint because, we can criticize everything, and we always talk about this. When you kind of step back a little bit and you see how other teams are built and how other rosters are built, you can be a little bit more critical of your own team just because you're in the weeds of it too much. But when you look at it from a different standpoint, it's like we're actually probably right there with these groups. And even the national media, like in their podcast, they're not really talking about the Pacers, but they always do kind of throw it in right at the end. Like, don't forget about the Pacers. Like, they're coming back with healthy guys and things like that. But once again, it's not like the topic, the forefront of the conversation, which I think is actually a good thing.
No, I think it is. And I also just think that this team has just like a bigger chip on their shoulders than any other team in the league right now. Like if you're Philly, hey, you have a lot of pressure on your shoulders. If you're Boston, you're saying, okay, you know what? Hey, maybe some people are doubting us a little bit, but Boston's Boston. I think there's other teams that are on the rise, like in Atlanta, that maybe they have a lot to prove. I think for the Pacers, like they're just trying to, prove themselves right rather than prove anyone wrong. And I think that this team is going to be one that this has been more than a year in the making of like, get Halliburton back, everything's going to fall in place. I think this is a group where, obviously Zubats, I feel like gets overshadowed at times. Like that was a big addition. It really was. But because it happened in February compared to July, it's not lumped into that same type of group. But that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge for the Pacers, for any, Miles Turner supporter, everything like that. And hey, rightfully so, he's there 10 plus years. I don't think it's going to take long to be incredibly excited about Big Zoo with this group because he brings a totally different aspect to the game than Turner did. So, let him sleep, let him hate, let him forget about us. Indiana's going to be all right. As we wrap this up, hey, Ryan, Brad, I know we're actually hitting everybody with a 2-part. So this ain't the last that you're going to hear from you guys, but any closing words as we wrap up this one and go to the next?
Brad, you got it.
Yeah, listen, we're just happy to be on all. It's a lot of fun to talk about all this. I think, Facci, you're kind of leading what I think when I hear you say that. There's an argument that this roster going into next season is better than the roster we had in the finals. And I think for Pacers fans, that is something to get excited about. I know they're going to have to see it with Zubats and Oubre Jr. and all that, but that's what you get excited about. And I think that's what, we'll be looking forward to. So, no, I don't have much more, but we appreciate the conversation. We love coming on and chatting with you guys. And hopefully Pacers Nation is getting as excited as we are to see a little bit more of what Hallie's got in store and the rest of this group. So.
Okay, as we wrap things up, I will just say there was something that leaked a couple of days ago. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it looks like the Pacers Statement Edition Dry Fit Swingman shorts are the yellow pinstripes that Jermaine O'Neal rocked back in the day, Facci. So we could be seeing those yellow pinstripes. I know Tyrese is a big fan of those, so we'll see if Tyrese gets his wish, and that is the city or the Statement Edition jerseys for the Pacers. But with that being said, like you said, Facci, we'll be back for a part 2 with the guys from the Pacers Post Up. You can find us at Pacers Pod STP, them at Pacers Post Up. We'll talk to y'all then. Peace out, Pacer Nation.